From day one, we are told who we should be, how to live, and what's acceptable. Before we even have a chance to discover ourselves, our society has already drawn those lines for us. But what happens when those lines are keeping us from knowing and embracing who we truly are? Welcome to Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox, a podcast about unpacking and unlearning everything that's kept you from living as your true self. Through honest conversations about your internal emotional landscape, sexuality, coming out later in life, relationships, and the journey to self-acceptance, we break free from the boxes we never chose. Hello, and welcome to Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox. I'm here today to talk about a topic that, strangely, in the last few weeks, I've received numerous messages, both on TikTok and on Instagram, in my DMs, with women asking basically the same question. And the question had to do with having trauma, having a traumatic experience. It might have been your first experience ever that was a sexual experience and it was traumatic and it was with a man. Or you might have been dating men and at some point had a traumatic experience with a man. And that after that event happened, for these multiple women who have been asking me questions, they said to themselves, I don't feel safe with men anymore. And from that place of saying that, they then turned toward women and had relationships with women, felt safe, felt desire, felt pleasure, actually really enjoyed being with these women. And then they said to themselves, my trauma turned me gay, or my trauma turned me bisexual. This is the question that I keep getting over and over again from women, and they are very insistent upon it. In fact, one of them sent me another creator's video on TikTok that said that she had identified as lesbian only because she had had such terrible experiences with men. So from the very beginning, she identified as lesbian. But then once she did healing and work on her trauma, she realized she's actually not a lesbian. And I don't know if it's that she's straight or exactly what her sexuality is, but it was leaning more towards the straight side of the fluidity spectrum. So this is a very popular topic. Now, one of my pinned posts on TikTok is a post where I say that your childhood sexual abuse did not turn you gay. Your childhood sexual abuse kept you from knowing yourself and understanding yourself, and therefore it took longer to realize that you were gay. So basically, that's my own lived experience. As humans, we all have different experiences. So as I've shared here many times before, I also did a 12-week program for women who had survived childhood sexual abuse. And all of the other women that were in my group had had abuse at the hands of men, and they were all in relationships with men. And they all were struggling just with their own difficulty around feeling vulnerable or feeling sexual and having flashbacks or whatever it was, but they still were partnered with men. They had not come out as gay. They had not decided they were going to start dating women. Did they at some point later in their life decide that? It's possible. I only knew them for 12 weeks, so I'm not sure. But what I want to say is our society is so trauma filled. I mean, if you grew up in a home and you have no trauma, you are really a lucky person, because even in the best homes with parents with like truly the very best intentions, there are small t traumas that happen. And those traumas, along with the conditioning that we receive as women in the world from society, the messaging of the patriarchy, the messaging of religious institutions, those combined together will keep you from being able to know yourself, from being able to know what gives you pleasure, what pleasure feels like in your body, right? I mean, I've worked with so many women who never masturbated. They never ever touched themselves because they learned that it was wrong and that any kind of sexual pleasure is a sin outside of your marriage. And so they never were curious. Curiosity was discouraged. So there are so many ways that our society shuts down our ability to really be free and to explore and to know ourselves and to be curious. Then we also have trauma laid in. And that trauma can look so many different ways. It can be growing up, in a one-parent family where there's not enough resources, or moving around all the time, or parents that have either serious mental health issues or addiction, or severe domestic violence going on in the household, or there's not enough money to pay for a roof over our heads. It can also be just really violent fighting that's going on in your home from when you're a very young person and your needs aren't being met and you have to be silent and you have to be quiet and you have to be good. So whatever these things are that are happening in our environments, whatever environment we grow up in, along with the conditioning that basically tells us that there's one way to be, there's a good and a bad, a right and a wrong, right? There are not that many opportunities for people to really understand and know themselves. So back to the women, these women, multiple women have asked me to do videos on this. And I did a few videos, and I did get some pushback from people who said, why do you have to bring trauma into this? Like, why are you bringing trauma into sexuality? Trauma doesn't have anything to do with your sexuality. And, look, I don't really agree with that, in that I do believe that trauma keeps us a lot of the time from our sexuality. Not for everybody. I know many lifelong lesbians that had extremely traumatic childhoods and they still came out. And then I know, many other people who did not have, the same amount of trauma, and it still took them a long time to come out because of the conditioning, because of the expectations, because of what they were taught, because of how they grew up, right? They were not allowed to connect to themselves. They were not allowed to connect to their bodies, or they would have been sinners. And so there was a lot of fear instilled in these people around connecting to who they were. They just didn't know themselves till they were like 50, and it dawned on them, even though maybe their whole life they were attracted to women and they knew that, but it never dawned on them that was because they were gay, because they were married to a man and this is what they were taught. So back to my question, which is, can trauma make you sexually fluid? That was one of the questions. So I tend to feel that a traumatic event with a man might create an environment where in your mind, you say to yourself, I wonder if I could be with a woman and if that would feel safe for me. It might be a catalyst to open you up to being with a woman and to giving it a try because you don't feel safe with a man. I know many women who have given it a try with women and they landed in the Deadsville zone. That doesn't work for them. It doesn't turn them on. They identify as very straight. Why they identify as very straight, I can't tell you. It could be the conditioning. It could be that they've had so much conditioning that the idea of a woman as a partner is like incomprehensible. Right? A man is there to protect you. You want a big man to hold you and protect you, a man around for that kind of safe energy, right? This thing that's sold to us. It's possible that is the image they have. And because of that, they just can't even let themselves go there. It's possible, right? I tend to think we're all somewhat sexually fluid, but many people say absolutely not. And I've met these people. I have friends who are those people who say absolutely not. I would not go there. Again, is it homophobia? Is it internalized homophobia? I don't know. I haven't worked with these people. But what I can tell you is, if you had trauma at the hands of a man, if you had sexual assault with a man and you felt very unsafe with men, and you then said to yourself, I wonder what it would be like to be with a woman, and I think I might try dating women. And then you met somebody and you actually got into a relationship, and inside of that relationship, you felt desire and longing and wanting and attraction. I mean, not just pleasure, right? Because we can pleasure ourselves. Like pleasure is something that is easy to feel when we're stimulated. So I'm not even going to go to feeling pleasure. I'm talking about feeling desire. Like you want this person, you want to touch them, you want your skin on theirs. If you have had those feelings with a woman and also you've had that attraction to men, I'm going to say that you are a sexually fluid person. And it's very possible that you did not know that because of the layers and layers of conditioning and homophobia in our society. It's not uncommon to have absolutely no idea that you are struggling with parts of you that are holding on to internalized homophobia because of the queer-phobic conditioning that's prevalent in society. If you would like to unpack and unlearn this queer-phobic conditioning, consider signing up for Unbox Your Queer-Phobic Conditioning, a self-led program that will take you through the steps needed to understand, befriend, and soften the part of you that is keeping you from accessing true acceptance and being able to embrace your queer identity. And also, you might have never felt attraction to any woman because women are not like men. Like a lot of men just like women. Like if you possess a woman's body, men like you, right? Women are not exactly like that. Women don't just like all women and feel attraction and desire for all women. You have to meet somebody that you actually really connect with for so many women on some level, emotionally, some kind of spark, typically for women, for you to really start to feel that deep desire and attraction. Now, maybe you feel that for some famous people that you see and there's no chance you're ever going to be with them. That's different. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about everyday people. So if you've never met somebody that you had those feelings with, I don't really think that that's enough information to tell you that you are not sexually fluid already, but you had been deeply conditioned by society to think that a man is the best partner for you. And that is what you followed. And until you had something dangerous happen where you felt deeply unsafe, you then decided you would try dating women. And when you started dating women, you felt safety and you also felt desire and attraction, which means you were sexually fluid. The trauma was a catalyst that opened you up to that possibility. I don't believe the trauma made you sexually fluid. Going back again to this post that one of these women shared with me, somebody who had a lot of trauma and I believe never was with men and had identified it as a lesbian only to ensure that she would never have to be with men. And then after doing healing work, realized that she was attracted to men. That's different. That's not about being someplace where you're having deep attraction and desire. That is, I'm going to slap a label on myself to keep men away from me and make sure everybody knows I'm not going to be touched by a man. And I understand that that can come from trauma. I do understand that a young person can grow up and as an adolescent, if you have suffered a great deal, slapping on a lesbian label could keep you safe. In fact, when I was younger and I used to go out to bars with one of my friends and we go out dancing, we would always say we were lesbians because we hated being hit on by guys. I had no idea I was gay at the time, but we always said we were lesbians. We always danced together. And, this is something that can be slapped on and it doesn't always work. I mean, sometimes men are like, oh, that's really hot. Like, let's all go home together or something like that. But, I'm not going to say that you can't, sort of slap the label on and then realize, holy shit, I'm actually not. That is a different trauma response than what we're talking about because these women felt desire and attraction for women. And they then went back to men and they found that they were actually sexually fluid. But this question of, is my sexual fluidity because I have trauma? Like, did my trauma cause me to be sexually fluid? First of all, just that question alone, I feel like it has so much homophobia in it, because the same question could be asked the other way, but wouldn't. Did my trauma cause me to be straight? I don't know. Nobody asks that question. They only ask the question this way. Why am I attracted to women? Is it because I have trauma? And again, I don't want to discount anybody's trauma and what they need to feel safe. That is very important. And also, relationships look a lot of different ways. There are relationships that are peer relationships that are not sensuality and sexuality based, but they're more of a, I feel safe with a woman. I'm not sexual. I'm asexual. And, maybe that can be caused by trauma, right? Maybe that can be a decision, but I'm going back to these women that have reached out to me who all said they had deep desire and attraction to women. Why this question needs to be asked in this way, for me, feels homophobic. It feels like there's internalized homophobia. I also love curiosity. Like, I love people who, they want to know, they want to understand themselves. I understand the curiosity around this question. I have shared here also, when I first came out, I thought it was because I had childhood sexual abuse. I really thought that was it. I just didn't like men. I didn't like their parts because of what happened to me. But as I've matured, I've realized, holy shit, I was gay all along. I just was so busy trying to overcome my trauma, I couldn't get a hold of it. And I've heard this from other women too, and other social media creators that maybe were in a marriage or a partnership with a man that had domestic violence. There was no way, there's no safe place to know what is actually happening for you, because you're in survival mode. If you live your life in survival mode, you're not really able to connect easily to what's happening for you. You're just surviving. So I recently was talking to another woman who has very intense trauma from her mother. And in reaction to the deep trauma that she suffered at her mother's hands, she lived a life of pushing all women very far away from her. She doesn't have female friends. She keeps women at a big distance. She married a man. It's the only man she's ever been with. And recently, she has had an awakening with a woman that is her catalyst, that has shaken her to the core, and her internal system, her emotional system, is railing against her because parts of her do not want her to step any direction toward this catalyst of hers, because this part of her learned women are so dangerous. You have to fight for your life around a woman. And so her internal system is in a great amount of conflict while she's having this awakening. But she is still feeling the desire and attraction to this woman. Her internal system doesn't like it. She has trauma at the hands of her mother, right? But she still has this attraction to the woman and finds that she's not attracted to any man, not her husband, not any man anymore. And she hasn't even had any interactions with this catalyst of hers. It's just waken her up. So for any of you out there that are putting yourself into this category of, my trauma created my sexual fluidity, my trauma created my openness to being with women, right? There might be some truth in some piece of that, which is, my trauma opened me up to look for safety somewhere else. And once I did that, I discovered, wow, I'm actually sexually fluid. And I would not have known that had I not, possibly, I mean, maybe you would have later, but at this point in your life, I did not know that. And had I not had this traumatic event happen, I don't know if I would have ever known that. I would have possibly never known that I am sexually fluid. So food for thought. I'd love to hear your feedback and your comments on this, for those of you that do resonate with this narrative that your trauma created your lesbianism, created your sexual fluidity, created your desire to be safe with a woman, which then led you to actually real attraction and desire for this woman. I would like to hear from you. Thanks so much for being here. for spending this time with me on Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more folks find these conversations. If you're ready to unbox from something that's keeping you stuck, I would love to support you. You can find the application to the show at unboxyoursexuality.com. Let's stay connected. Find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Lesbian Curiosity Coach. Give me a follow and join the conversation. Remember, we only have this one time through. Why not unbox yourself and let your true self shine in all its beautiful glory?